So, why do we get old? It's seriously one of biology's greatest mysteries. And today, we're going to dive deep into the science behind it. It all starts with a paradox that honestly feels like it breaks all the rules, right? Our bodies are these incredible self-repairing machines. Our skin replaces itself every few weeks, our bones can mend, our cells are constantly dividing and regenerating. So, if we're always rebuilding ourselves, why does the whole system eventually break down? Why don't we just keep going forever? Okay, so the first piece of this puzzle is hiding deep inside our cells. It turns out our amazing ability to regenerate isn't infinite. There's a built-in, non-negotiable limit. It's like a biological clock ticking away inside every single one of us. Well, this concept has a name. It's called the Hayflick limit. It's basically the rule that most of our cells can only split a certain number of times, somewhere around 40 to 60, before they just stop permanently. It's a pre-programmed retirement. So the real question is, how on earth does a cell even know how to count?
The answer is at the very tips of our chromosomes, in these protective little caps called telomeres. Honestly, the best way to think of them is like the plastic tips on your shoelaces that keep them from fraying. Every single time a cell divides, a tiny piece of that telomere cap gets snipped off. Over dozens and dozens of divisions, they just get shorter and shorter until finally they get critically short. At that point, the cell freaks out, interprets it as catastrophic DNA damage, and slams on the brakes for good. Division over.
But here's where it gets really interesting. This cellular clock, it's not universal. There's a fascinating exception, and it's powered by an enzyme called telomerase. Now, in most of our normal body cells, this enzyme is turned off, so the clock ticks down. But in stem cells and, most notoriously in cancer cells, telomerase is very much active. It acts like a little maintenance crew, completely rebuilding the telomeres after every single division. And this is what gives them a kind of biological immortality, allowing them to completely bypass the Hayflick limit. Okay, so a cellular countdown clock is a big deal. But believe it or not, that's only part of the story. Aging isn't just about our cells running out of divisions. It's about a much bigger, system-wide failure. It's about our body's maintenance and repair crews getting absolutely, completely overwhelmed by a relentless storm of damage. Scientists have this term for them, the hallmarks of aging. It's this cascade of interconnected failures. To really get what's going on, let's zoom in on two of the biggest saboteurs of our biology: the corruption of our genetic blueprint and the failure of our cellular power plants. First up, let's talk about our DNA. The very instruction manual for life itself. From the second we're born, this precious blueprint is under a constant, nonstop assault from, everything. From byproducts inside our own bodies to things like UV radiation from the sun. And the scale of this attack is just staggering. Scientists estimate that in a single human cell, there can be up to a million DNA damage events, and that's every single day. Now, our bodies have these amazing repair crews to fix this mess. But as we get older, they start to fall behind. They just can't keep up. And when that repair crew gets overwhelmed, the consequences are severe. Unrepaired damage hardens into permanent mutations, corrupting the cell's instruction manual. This, as you can imagine, dramatically increases the risk of cancer. And in a lot of cases, if the damage is just too much to handle, the cell pulls an emergency brake. It enters a state called senescence. These are the infamous zombie cells. They stop dividing, but they don't die. Instead, they just hang around, spewing out inflammatory chemicals that damage all the healthy cells around them. All right, so our genetic blueprint is getting corrupted. But what about the energy supply that's supposed to keep everything running? Well, this is where our story takes another dark turn, as the very thing that powers us actually begins to poison us. So, picture this. Inside almost every one of your cells, you've got thousands of tiny little power plants. These are your mitochondria. They're the ones converting food and oxygen into the energy that keeps us alive. When we're young, they're super efficient, but as they age, they start to sputter and leak toxic byproducts called free radicals. You can think of it as cellular pollution. And this kicks off this absolutely brutal, vicious cycle. The less efficient mitochondria produce more of these damaging free radicals. The free radicals then attack the mitochondria themselves and the cell's DNA, making the mitochondria even less efficient. It's a downward spiral that accelerates over time, starving the cell of energy while flooding it with this toxic gunk. Okay, let's take a step back. We've got a cellular countdown timer, a corrupted genetic blueprint, and power plants that are turning into pollution factories. So what does all this chaos actually look like on the grand scale? Let's zoom out and see how these microscopic failures cause the big diseases we all associate with aging. Let's start with the biggest energy hog in your entire body, your brain. It only makes up about 2% of your body weight, but it devours a whopping 20% of your energy. So when that mitochondrial power supply starts to fail, the brain is one of the first and hardest hit. And you can draw a direct line from this energy crisis to some of the biggest neurodegenerative diseases we know of. In Parkinson's, for example, specific energy-hungry neurons that produce dopamine die off. In Alzheimer's, the brain just doesn't have the energy it needs to clear out toxic proteins. In both cases, the power outage is directly linked to the disease. All right, now let's talk about the heart. I mean, this is the one organ that just can't take a break, ever. Its cells are absolutely packed with mitochondria to fuel that constant, nonstop pumping. And just like the brain, it's incredibly vulnerable to an energy shortage. See, the mitochondria pump out this molecule called ATP. It's basically the high-octane fuel for muscle contraction. When the heart's muscle cells can't get enough of this fuel, they simply can't contract with enough force. This slow, progressive weakening is exactly what we call heart failure. The engine is literally running out of gas. And finally, our muscles. You know that feeling of losing strength and stamina as we get older? Well, it turns out it's not just because we're being less active. It's a cellular process that starts right back in those failing little power plants. It's a real 1-2 punch. The dysfunctional mitochondria in our muscle cells fail to supply enough energy for them to work properly, and at the same time, their free radical pollution directly damages the muscle fibers. This double whammy is a primary driver of sarcopenia, which is the scientific name for age-related muscle loss. So, after diving into the cellular clocks, the damaged DNA, and those failing power plants, what's the big takeaway? What's the final verdict here? It all boils down to this, really. We don't age just because of one single failure, like a clock running out. We age because our body's incredibly sophisticated systems of maintenance, repair, and defense are ultimately and collectively overwhelmed by the relentless accumulation of damage over a lifetime. It's a war of attrition that, for now, our biology always loses. And this whole idea leaves us with a really profound and exciting question. If aging is just the result of accumulated damage overwhelming our repair systems, does that mean it's not some unbreakable law of nature? Could we, theoretically, reinforce those systems, reduce the rate of damage, and in doing so, actually slow the process of aging itself? That is the frontier that science is exploring right now.